not at all necessary, but just an overflowing of the heart and joy and gratitude to welcome Natalie Goldberg this evening to offer us a Dharma talk in the wake of her latest book being released, Writing on Empty. We could just say the title and sit another round. So rather than introducing, I think I'll just say thank you, Natalie, and welcome.
Thank you. So glad to see all of you. Some of you I know well. Can you hear me? That wind beautiful? I've been in New Mexico a long time, and I've helped a friend all afternoon, so I didn't have time to set up a fancy Dharma talk, but that's the truth of all how I do it. So, but I've been practicing for a long time. So I trust myself, I guess. Well, I'm going to test you now. Who here knows the town? See, I'm working your mind now. And you can't think. Don't think, let it come up. What is a small town that's considered not that good of a town, you know, like a nothing town in New Mexico that I want to say I consider a literary town, but it's been written about in great literature? You can raise your hand and guess. No, that's too easy. No. It's too, okay, one of the things I want to tell you about literature, and this is why I've been a Zen person, but I've studied writing, and all that I know about writing is about the Dharma, is that literature takes something that people don't notice. And like, I could write for 5-10 pages about this felt glass case. Take things that you don't notice, but everything in Dharma matters. Okay, this wall is a being. This table is a being. For sure, this floor is. Okay, so given that, what town we don't pay much attention to? And don't stay in this is me as a teacher. Don't stay just around near Santa Fe. People go to churches, people go to Chimayo. It's further out. No, but she's getting closer. It must be her Tibetan practice.
Where was the last picture?
The last picture show is, no, that's in Texas. Larry McMurtry.
Florence Corner.
No. No. But do you see how people are, so when I actually tell you, it will create, you're creating space now for it to drop in. Otherwise, you won't listen. But I want you to see if you can figure it out. Of course, I have forgotten it, but it'll come back.
There's an online guest, Tularosa.
No, but that's a nice poetry name, Tularosa. Oh my goodness. No, but yes, you understand what I'm talking about. No.
Rodeo.
No, is there a town, Rodeo?
It's called Rodeo.
But no, it isn't it. Should I ask you if you've read this book? It's one of the, it's gorgeous. And if you haven't read it, you need to read it because it's one of the staples of New Mexico. You ready? Ceremony by Leslie Marmon Silko. Do you know what town I'm talking about? As soon as I read the book, I had to go, what? No, she's from Gallup, but it's not near Gallup. Oh, wait a minute, it is Gallup. She's from Laguna Pueblo. I'm sorry. It is Gallup. It is Gallup. And, you know, people just drive through it. It doesn't seem like much, and there are a lot of alcoholics there. But suddenly, they became holy people to me because Leslie had spent the time at 28 years old to write literature and give it to our country. How many of you have read Ceremony? Very few. Okay, you need to read it again. It's beautiful. And if I was going in this direction, I would have brought it in to read you some of it. But it's real literature. Ceremony by Leslie Marmon Silko. She was 28 years old when she wrote it. And she really was the second generation of Native Americans that broke open their language and trusted themselves to give you the real thing. Scott Momaday, I'd say, who just recently died, really broke it open with, what's his book? Now you're scared. Housemaid of Dawn, thank you. Yeah. Okay, I could tell stories all the time. I'm out of control because I'm not working anymore. So I am doing an online course, Sitting Down the Bones. Isn't that great? Usually it's writing down the bones, but it has nothing to do with writing. It's sitting. And wow, people are serious about sitting. When I started in the 70s, nobody cared. And I was an outlier. But now, you should see these people. Even on the computer, they're good. So anyway, where was I going? There was a reason. Oh, I know why I brought up Gallup. Just before I left to drive over here, I got an email from an old student. I don't know if she was able to, I wrote her quickly. I just said one line, I have to go, I'm late, but if you can, tune into Mountain Cloud. I'm giving a talk here, but I'm not going to say her name because I didn't ask her if I could. And she wrote me a wonderful letter, an email, saying, maybe you don't remember me, but I'm an old student. I studied with you years ago, and I was a nurse in Gallup during COVID. And she said, you know, she said, I just read your book. This is my new book, Writing on Empty. And it's about the COVID years. And unfortunately, it's still happening, COVID, you realize. And quite a few people now recently have had COVID really bad. Friends of mine, not abstract New York Times, but actual friends. And they're having a really hard time. So please be careful. And I usually wear a mask. And I do a nasal spray that's been really great. So she told me that, and see, that's why literature is so wonderful. She said, I read it, and she said, you know, after a while, we worked so hard, and it was so hard for people in Gallup, one of the great literary spots in the country. And she said it was so hard. And she said that sometimes I don't believe it happened. And she said, reading your book, I realized, yes, it was true. COVID really has been happening. And it really happened then. And this book is a lot about me. You know, everything was pulled out. All the things that I say about writing practice that I've taught for a long time doesn't work. There were no, everything was closed. Because usually I say, get out of the house, because you always want to do the dishes or do anything but write. So get out of the house, get to a cafe or a library. And all the things that I did with people, you couldn't be with people. So I had to find my way again. And it was very hard. And and really though, I realized that structure, I needed a structure. And all the structures had been pulled out. Structures I'd written on and taught thousands of people, the gig was up. And it was really scary for me. But in that void, I found my footing again in a different way. And one of the things I thought I would read to you, people have always said, you've written about your father, but you've never written about your mother. Well, I finally found language for my mother. And it's not language, I always knew, but I was so mean and stupid. You know, all the years of sitting, I still hated my mother. I couldn't help it. And then therapy helped some. I understood it, but I couldn't feel it. And today is her birthday. I mean, she's been dead now 16 years, but today is her birthday. So I thought I would read a little of that, and then I'm going to read something else, okay? And usually in a Dharma talk, I don't do question and answer, but I want to. But you can't ask me what kind of pen I use or what kind of notebook, okay? You can't ask me any of those normal questions. So, okay, what happened was I opened it with Eddie, my friend Eddie and I sitting in the park, and we decided to sit opposite each other once a week for 2 hours and tell each other about our lives. He's a writer too. And tell, things like, Eddie, I never really understood why you didn't like your mother. Tell me again. We've been friends forever. And we would and it was, nobody cared but us. And there was a little structure in my life. And I thought, oh, I could use this. Because I was brought up in Zen with a very deep structure. I was telling Scott that we had to be 5 minutes ahead of time and then sitting in our seat before the bell rang at 5 a.m. I did that for 12 years. And it really taught me a lot, held me in good stead. And now with Israel and Gaza, I felt, Natalie, you're a Jew and you know nothing about Judaism except pastrami sandwiches. So I've been studying and taking some classes, and I told Scott, I came in, it's supposed to be from 7 to 8:30. Where's Kira? Kieran, is he here? Oh, okay. He's in the class, which I was surprised, which was nice for me. But I came one day late, and I turned around to my friend Susanna, and I said, has everyone dropped out? She said, no, they're all just late. Sure enough, and a half hour later, everybody marched in. And then the other thing that I really loved was an hour and a half. In an hour and a half, we have to have a snack. And it's a big deal. You have to sign up to bring a snack. It was just so different than my training. I kind of loved it. And then I noticed I usually wear black. And this, I thought, well, it's black and white at least. So it's softer here. You're lucky. It's a lot softer here at Mountain Cloud. So where was I going? I don't know where I was going, but so Eddie and I, so we had this structure, and I thought, oh, good, I'll start with that. But then Eddie, while we weren't meeting, he was bike riding, and he fell off his bike and had a really bad accident and was in the hospital for 2 weeks. So my structure blew up And it broke me open, actually. So I'll read a little from that, and then I'll read something else. Slouched in the plastic chair on the back portal, and this you'll appreciate, people who are from New Mexico. The people who, the editors kept writing to me, portal, you mean porch, don't you? I said, no, portal. How do you spell portal? I can't find it. Well, I said, it's New Mexico. Slouched in the plastic chair on the back portal, I feel that none of my past writing history mattered. No one cares about books. I bludgeon myself. No one reads. They walk around attached to mechanical contraptions. Besides, Black, Asian, immigrant, refugee voices are finally being heard. Get out of the way. The newspapers feature fresh blood, new writers, first books. Get out of the way. I continue. You are the only person left who is still rummaging through old drugstores, searching for cheap spiral notebooks at $1.56, the old price 40 years ago, and a color cover you never used before. And all of your pens, they leak. I still handwrite everything. You got blue ink all over your fancy yellow bed sheets. I feel void, shallow, miserable, a nobody. It springs to mind that I am like a 50s housewife, a pimple on her chin devastating, ruining her day. That insubstantial. Then I'm going to skip ahead. I just didn't know what to do with myself, if this sounds familiar. Gnats, flies, moths stir all around me. I watch a monarch twitter in the juniper branches. I look past the hedge to a cloud and experience this unalleviated ennui, this feeling again and again of being a housewife in the 50s in the unforgiving suburbs. Each day waking, going nowhere. In a quiet, almost dull moment, there is air, a lightness. It's early morning, shadows long across the cement portal floor, an opening, a leap happens. This must have been how my mother felt. For the first time ever, I am flooded with understanding. No, I'll admit it, compassion, a softness for the woman who gave birth to me in a Brooklyn hospital, unconscious, drugged, my father asleep on the sofa in his in-laws' Brooklyn apartment. Only my grandparents sat in the waiting room, alive with hope. My mother had been dead for 15 years by this point. I'd done plenty of psychological work around her and fully understood the dynamics of my childhood, but I could never take the big step to feel love for her. Here, because my life is at a dead stop, I am given a gift, saturated with emotion for my mother. I miss her so. My hands motion in the thin, dry air, gesturing to her, not even sure she knew that I had hated her. She mattered deeply to me, and I feel the poignancy of the years past. That was huge for me, and COVID gave me that. Not COVID, but the dead stop of everything, which if I was a good Zen student, I would have seen it right away, a great opportunity in the void. But instead, it was very painful too, and a lot of people died, and we almost lost the whole Navajo Nation in New Mexico. So let me, are there any questions so far? And then I'll go on and read some other section. Okay, well, my mother lived in Florida, and my father did on Long Island. We were on Long Island, and all summer we went swimming. And my father was a champion swimmer in Brooklyn. What's his name? No, he was Tarzan. Who was Wiseman? Yeah, he was a Jew. And when he won the Olympics, my father said, well, if he can, then I can. So my father taught himself to swim in Coney Island and became a champion swimmer. And so I'm used to being near water, but I was always okay in New Mexico because there was an oceanic feeling. But when my mother died, who lived in Florida, I didn't realize that it was built in. I'd visit her, and I was near the ocean. So at some point, maybe some of you went swimming in Abiquiu Lake, and they drained the lake, and it was very upsetting to me. And then, well, I'll read you this, and it tells you what. I don't know where, okay. And then that Sunday, we stopped by Abiquiu Lake on Labor Day weekend, planning to hike at Ghost Ranch. And like a mirage, the lake was full again. I had gone on and on about how it had been emptied and how miserable. I think in another book, I don't know if it was this book. I ripped off my clothes and dived in my underwear. It was more wonderful, more beautiful than I even remembered. Layers of salmon and pink cliffs in the distance and hardly any ripples. Calm, open. I'd had something I loved so deeply and fully, and it was taken away. Not for a moment, like dropping an ice cream cone, but for 2 whole years it was taken away. And I had even let go. I do not let go easily. And here it was, the lake, back. This was 2 years ago. I felt like a jigsaw puzzle, whole but broken. I could not comprehend. The lake here, back. I was like a dragon sensing the water. I dropped everything. Forget serenity. I'd come every day, smash any appointments. Nothing else mattered. Let the corn and zucchinis rot in the vegetable bin in the refrigerator. I got back what I never imagined getting back. I had to make the most of it before the cold settled in. I had at least 3 weeks. For the whole last week, I drove the hour blasting Dylan's "Oh Mercy, Ring Them Bells" all day by myself. I wanted to meet the lake alone, to make sense of coming and going, of having it again. Then I called a new Zen teacher in town. You have to see this. When are you free all day? We would go that Thursday, right after I had a double booster for my immune system in a back room of the hospital, in case the vaccine I had gotten 2 weeks before didn't work. I had to wait an hour to make sure there were no reactions to the booster. I snuck out after 45 minutes. I'm going to the lake, I called back to the nurse. My friend didn't have a bathing suit. She just moved here from Texas. Of course, she didn't have a bathing suit. As a foregone conclusion, I figured that the state next to mine had no fun. Everyone was busy prohibiting abortions and closing down open learning of history in the public schools. We jumped in my car. I packed it with 2 folding chairs, noodles, foam strips for floating, sunscreen, she was fair-skinned, water bottles, a banana, apples from the backyard tree, and river shoes to walk on the rocks. I told her, I'm going to try to not say a lot about where we are going so you can be surprised and let it all unfold in front of you. After driving for 45 minutes, the top of the pedernal peaked like an oculus over a mesa in front of it. I pointed it out. Guess whose ashes are up there? She couldn't imagine. I said, O'Keefe's name, and she turned in her seat in awe. New Mexico, I nodded. Someone awake was looking at this land. Are we in an emergency? I don't know. I warned her, we come to a very steep downhill, but don't worry, right at the bottom is a quick left. We parked and gathered all our equipment together from the car trunk. Way down, we headed for the swimming area, over the hump, and then the shift to soft ground. As we got closer, it was evident something had changed, but I couldn't comprehend it. I had left the lake the night before at 6:30, almost evening. But before us was a drained lake, algae already forming on the periphery. It's gone, a woman in a drooping tent on a rock exposure said. I recognized her. The day before, she had been in a kayak, told me she had leave from the military, originally from Puerto Rico. I stared. This couldn't be true. It was true. It was man-made, and they took it away. Overnight, I lost it again. I got a taste of the cool, deep water. Then it was gone. My Zen friend was standing next to me. I knew what to do. Do you want to sit? I asked. We returned our stuff to the car and climbed up to the pavilion. A cement floor and a tin roof and 2 long wooden picnic tables with attached long benches. Another table perpendicular to the other 2, and a stone chimney where you can barbecue. A weekday, no one around, especially now that the lake was gone. Big vista from up there. We didn't look much. We bowed, sat at 2 ends of one bench, and went below discursive thought, like going underwater, our eyes unfocused. We sat still. What else could we do? I hoped my body could find repair from the jerk of discovery, then disappearance of the lake within days. My life had been gladly scrambled for the lake's presence. The slightest pitter-patter on the metal roof, the smallest shower from a single cloud above our heads, then silence. Then another shower, like someone tossing a handful of pebbles on the roof, but quieter than pebbles. If we weren't still, we might never have heard it. Then, after a half hour of sitting, we slow walked around the picnic tables, lifting a foot and placing it down, the other foot. How lucky we were to have 2 feet. 10 minutes we circled the square tables, slow as clouds with no wind. Then we sat again, settled in, said nothing. I could feel the air, the land, the state I loved, the very slight breeze on my arms. The sun and heat were just beyond the shadow cast by the tin roof we sat under. But the shadow was always cool in a dry land. Time opened. The lake was a good thing, and now there was no lake. There was this and not this, the great stillness of New Mexico, the absolute real magic, real draw under everything else was how still, how motionless, unmoving, becalmed this land could be. And it showed off for us, matched our immobile sitting moment for moment. We did not sit alone. We sat with everything, including the mirage of a lake and the mirage of our lives, tick, tick, ticking away. That night, I emailed Eddie the whole story. He is away in France. Eddie writes, I can't believe it. How can they just drain a lake like a bathtub? Natalie, I'm so sorry. I really understand how much it meant to you. What can I say? My summer in this wide open space of New Mexico, like the mind of God, empty. So, is it, I have some time. Yeah, okay, good, okay. So you realize this was 2 years ago. It takes a long time. I wrote it right away, but it takes a long time to publish something. And it takes a lot of perseverance. It takes a whole lifetime. And that's why it's so good to have a good training, strong spine in the back. Okay. So are there some questions? Oh, why don't we look here? Or comments, really. Oh, great. My mother's first name was Helen. No, it was Sylvia. It was Sylvia Helen. Thank you. Yeah.
My grandmother's.
Oh. It's old-fashioned names, I guess. Things have moved on.
The book, writing about not being able. Thanks. First of all, thank you for that beautiful reading. But when I was reading your book and you're writing about writer's block, once you name it, you dare to name it that, but about not being able to write, about all of this being stripped away. But then one has the feeling that you're writing all along. I mean, I'm reading the book and it's like that whole period of 2 years is you're writing this.
I'm always writing. Not as much now, but yes, I lived as a writer. I lived as a dharma person. So, you practice dharma not just when you're sitting on the cushion. And, I'm always noticing things. And sometimes I don't. I don't notice anything, but something awake is always in us. Everyone, even if you never go to Zen or never go to Buddhism or never go to any religion, there's something awake in you. And what we're trying to do really is meet that awake part of us. So sometimes you'll see me at a party or something, and I look like I'm not paying attention to anything. And then I can write about it. Because when I write, I close the gap between, the distance and what another part of me saw. Does that make sense? And that's why I'm just going to use this as an example, why people can remember incest. It's in them from maybe when they were 2, and people think it won't be remembered because you're a little kid, but something in you saw it and paid attention. I'm just using that, but there are many examples. So, but you're very, obviously I wrote about Valerie. Did people realize that? Yeah. But sometimes I use people's names and sometimes I don't. And you were so new in New Mexico. I wanted to give you the space to not name you. But I want to say that you're very lucky to have her because she's very literary. She really loves literature. And even when she gives a Dharma talk and it's about koans are stories, things that happen. And she makes them very alive. And I told Scott when I got here, I was driving here, and because I was helping someone, I didn't plan a Dharma talk. And I thought, I should tell Valerie, because Valerie, oh, you're so lucky. She you know, thinks about it and studies it and really spends time when she gives a Dharma talk and shares a koan. And it's quite wonderful. And so I really appreciate you. Yeah, I really wanted to show her at the beginning New Mexico and how I loved New Mexico. So, but it's really no different. For me, there's no difference between writing and the Dharma. It's the same. I call it writing practice. You can have running practice, bike practice, because not everybody wants to sit all the time. And, you know, it was Katagiri Roshi, my Zen teacher, who actually suggested, you want to write, why don't you make writing your practice? I said to him, you want to get rid of me? But I call him my great writing teacher. And that's why I love Musashi. Do you remember the great swordsman? Because he didn't study with Japanese, he didn't study with regular swords at sword school. He would go and study with Zen masters. He'd hear about someone and walk 100 miles in the mountains to a Zen teacher. And he would study Zen, so he didn't have any of the rules. So he had a wooden sword instead of the steel swords. He would come late, which would drive, you know, in Japan would drive them crazy, and it would undo his opponent. But he didn't want, after a while, he didn't want to do it anymore. But everybody challenged him. He'd become so good. And in a way, I'm not saying I'm like him, but I wanted to study him. And I went to his grave and in Japan. And I've always identified with him because of that, because I didn't get an MFA, which I respect, but I did a whole different way of practice. I'm still here. A lot of my students stop and then they come back.
I can't see, but there might be someone online.
There's one online.
Can you unmute?
How do you do this? I don't want to see myself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, who are you?
I'm Alex.
Okay, hi, Alex.
Hi, Natalie. I've actually,
First of all, where are you?
I'm in Seattle, and I actually read your book the day after getting home from the Olympic Peninsula. So, Port Towns and all of that is really special to me too. So it was kind of neat to read that.
Yeah, there's a bunch about. I wrote a lot of this book, almost all of it, in Port Townsend.
Yeah. So my question for you, my mom has been in and out of hospice for the last several years, still going. And I'm having a lot of trouble forgiving her. I've really been trying to do that. So that part of the book with your mom was really poignant for me. And I'm just wondering, I know that COVID stopped everything and you're attributing your forgiveness to that, but I'm wondering if you can also point to anything else, any of your other practices maybe preparing you to get to that moment, or just anything that you
Well,
think
I
is helpful.
was in therapy for 20 years, mostly
Same.
about my mother. Yeah,
Here,
that's
yeah.
how attached I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so at that point, I understood everything, but I couldn't let go. I just couldn't let go.
So do you feel like letting go was the thing that helped you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, my whole life had been blown apart. And finally, I had to let go or I'd go crazy.
Right. I understand.
But
Thank
hey, yeah, I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
And in some way, my generation, I taught writing, and I've taught thousands of people. And so I got to hear my generation. I was born in 1948. We didn't like our mothers. I heard time after time about people who hated their mothers. And so it reinforced it for me. And recently, much younger, I think they were in their 40s, a haiku group, a really big group, about 60 people, someone, the teacher, it wasn't me, said, well, who's your best friend? We went around to everyone, and I swear a third of the people said, my mother. And I thought, they're all lying. And then I realized it was a different generation, and they had different, it was a whole different attitude. And the parents were probably different. And
Yeah, my
met their,
generation really loves their mom too. I'm
yeah.
Generation X, and so I'm an outlier.
Oh,
I'm
I
really
could show
trying
you a
to.
bunch of people.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thanks for the
sure.
book. Yeah.
Thank you. You live in a great area.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And I also love New Mexico. So I have a weird reciprocal thing where I go back and forth too. But yeah, it's beautiful. Thanks.
I've been in New Mexico 50 years. It's a long time.
Thank you, Natalie. I'm Michael, and I'm in the Zendo. I'm not sure if this is one of the normal questions, but you said in the first section you read that people don't read. That was one of the thoughts you had at the time.
Yes.
So you've written and said a lot about writing. How do I read?
How do you read?
Yeah,
Read
that
a book.
is.
I think that's what I meant. Do you remember I said that people are busy with their mechanical equipment? Yeah, in the middle section, I carry on about the internet and what it's doing to people. But I have learned to say it in a more palatable way, and not just like carry on. But it actually stopped me from teaching because I couldn't get people's attention. I couldn't get, they couldn't tell me how to drive to their house in verbal directions. And they really missed out on things. But I handled it well. And then if you read the book, I make peace. I have a very heavy dream. And I finally realize I'm burying myself. And I realized that I couldn't understand what the dream was about. And then I have two young brother and sister, which I don't have in my real life. And they're arguing. And I don't want to go into the whole thing, but I realized that I had to accept, whatever people do. And the world has moved on, And people do write, and I hope they read too. It's been upsetting to me. I actually was with I don't want to say where, but I was with two people in a back porch, and really intelligent people, and they're in their 50s. And, really wonderful people. And somehow James Baldwin came up. Do you know James Baldwin? Yeah. They didn't know. I could see their faces were blank. And these were smart people. My heart broke, and there's a lot of people that, just seems like everything that we valued is gone. So I'm going to be the Edna St. Vincent Millay resident writer for the month of August. And I could see, I say it to people, I'm not great on her poetry. I don't know it really well, but I know her name. I know she's a poet. I was invited, and people just have no idea who she is, has never heard of her. And that scares me. Carson McCullers, who I adore, who got me writing. But people are writing a lot, but I want them reading too. Yeah. Because those are our teachers. What's your accent?
German.
German, okay. But you speak English well. Yeah.
I had to read a lot of English. So
See? See? But it's not, nothing is separate. Literature is not separate from sitting or separate from anything. And certainly in the 70s when we practiced Zen, we didn't know. We just didn't know very much. I'm amazed with the people I'm working with now, sitting down the bones, and we don't do writing. We only do sitting on Zoom. How much they know. Not know, but understand. I think people know how to rest better now. We didn't. We were, just killers. Did you have your hand up? Yeah. You're Nick, right?
Yeah.
I can't believe what a genius I've become, that I knew
Thanks for
someone's name.
remembering.
Yeah. I have no memory anymore.
I was curious, in your recent, more intensive foray into Judaism, if there's any teachings or things that have stood out to you.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I really tried to stay with it, with Judaism. And many, many years ago, I could probably tell you, it was in the late 70s, I was sitting a sesshin, if you know what that is, 7-day sit. We sat a lot, and Kadagiri wasn't messing around. We sat from 5 a.m. till 9 at night, 40 minutes, 10 minutes walking, 40 minutes, And so, and when I went into what we call Dokusan, one-to-one with the teacher, I said, it's kind of funny. The more I sit, the more Jewish I feel. And I was aware that I was sitting sesshin over Yom Kippur, which is the holiest of holy in Judaism. And he said, why don't you leave? He said, why don't you leave and go study Judaism? I said, I don't want to, and I don't really know a lot about it. And he said, go ahead. He said, go ahead. He said, I said, oh. And he said, I really didn't want to do it. And he said, if you go deep enough in Judaism, you'll find Zen. And I had just won a poet. I was a poet then, and I just won a poetry fellowship. So being a fanatical in my generation, I went to Israel. And I couldn't find anything. And so I came back after 6 months, and I said, I can't find it, and I kept practicing Zen. Now I realize Zen, because I've gone deep enough in Zen, this is important, I now can hang out even when I'm uncomfortable, and I know the questions to ask from Zen. So in other words, I was too ignorant to stay in there and learn from my own religion. But he's right. Sometimes I feel like, are they talking Zen here? And I'm sure you can find that in Christianity, in Muslim, in any religion. If you go deep enough. And I think, wow, he keeps teaching me. He died, unfortunately, when he was 62 in 1990. So it was 34 years ago. But I wasn't ripe. I never forgot what he said, but I wasn't ripe for it. And that's an important thing, that I think I said recently, or I wrote it in a book.
I was at your talk at Upaya, and you said,
okay, I said,
sometimes you want the teacher, but you're not ready.
Yeah, you want the teacher, but you're not ready for years later. Yeah, we all want the teacher, but yeah, good. I thought I saw you before. Yeah.
I was doing espionage over at Upaya on behalf of Mountain Climb.
We're very lucky to have two great Zen centers at two different sides of this city, really.
Natalie, do you feel more at home in Japan or in Israel as a Jewish person?
Oh, Well, I was very ignorant. I just thought I had found the greatest thing. I didn't know Japan's history, that Japan was linked up with Germany and was planning to do to Eastern people what the Germans were doing to the Jews. You know, that they were really, I just was ignorant. And so I didn't feel comfortable in Israel because I was ignorant. I thought I'd get off the plane, and this is what the Israelis hate about American Jews. I thought they were going to be waiting for me with bagels and lox. But it's a tough life there. It's very tough. And they're Israelis. A lot of them don't really care about Judaism as much. And I've been disturbed. I don't want to get into a whole thing, but I've been sitting, and sometimes Valerie has joined me, sitting for peace in the Middle East on the plaza on Sundays. But finally, at the end of May, after 6 months, I decided not. I thought nobody's interested in peace, in creating peace. But I recently was at Einstein's museum in Bern, Switzerland. And they said if they did a study, and they said that only 1% of Jews, if they had a choice, would become Orthodox, and that most Jews want to integrate. Sure, we want to be part of everything, just like Black people want to be not left out, or any kind of ethnic group, or not ethnic, but cultural group. We want to join. We want to be part of things. And people are so surprised by Obama. He was thrilled, which I understand. He was brilliant. And I think, when Jews were allowed in Germany to be part of the civilization, we got Einstein, we got Freud, not because Jews are miraculous. Black people, if we're allowed, will also blossom. Everyone will. Native Americans will blossom in the society. People shouldn't be left out. So I didn't answer your question.
I'm thinking what the home is for people, and you chose your home to be New Mexico. And maybe another question is, why New Mexico and why Santa Fe?
Because I like the emptiness. I like the empty space, which not everyone likes. Some people, it makes them paranoid. Or I've had less students who've come to study with me. They hated New Mexico. Like the streets are empty, the roads, you could drive around. It was a good question, though. I'm the most home. They were good to my grandparents, the U.S. In the late 1800s. They ran from pogroms. Oh, okay.
And there's also in the chat asking if you could talk about the poem that opens the book.
Oh, no one has ever asked me that. Okay, who first? Was there another question? Was it? Oh,
Me.
Go ahead.
can I
Hi.
see her? Hi, where are you? Oh, there
I
you go.
am, yeah, hi.
Hi.
I am in the high desert of Arizona, northern Arizona.
And what's your
Prescott.
name?
Nahama.
Nahama. What a beautiful name.
It's Hebrew.
Oh,
And I grew up Orthodox Jewish, and it was painful. I'm not involved in it anymore, but there's so much I want to say to you, because I feel so bonded with you in just from reading your books. And I just finished Writing on Empty. And I read it very quickly, but as I got to the end, I didn't want the book to end, so I read it like a couple of pages at a time, just to prolong the delicious taste of it. And so I just finished it. I listened to your talk on Upaya the other night, and I recently retired after 38 years. I worked as a physical therapist. And I decided that when I retired, I wanted to go back to what I love, and that was music. So I wanted to learn how to play piano and reading, which I didn't have much time to do. So one of the first books that I read was Ceremony, and it brought me to my knees. I was just in awe, just the devastation and the beauty.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to read, and I wanted to write. And it's interesting because I just jumped into reading. I jumped into learning how to play piano, and I love it. But I have huge resistance to
I
writing.
knew she was going to say that.
Yeah, and
I've taught for years.
I was going to ask you another question, but I thought this is the most
Okay.
real thing I can ask you. So
I'm going to cut through and just say it's in my books, but that isn't enough. You need to get out of the house, show up at some place, and get a writing friend. Even if it's now my students, they talk on the phone to each other, or they read, or they do email to each other. They do writing practice. But you need to do it. It's just like anything else. You want to run? I think today I can't run. There's a little breeze. You have to be tough and muscle in there. And just pick up the pen and go, but get out of the house. And here you think Natalie would know better, but now I was going to say I'm retired. I was going to say I'm retired, but you're not supposed to use that word. I'm retired, and so I think, I'll just rest at home and write there. I'd get no writing done. I have to get out of the house.
okay.
Yeah, and get a friend. Or tell your friend by Saturday, what's today, Thursday? By Saturday, I'm going to have 3 sides of 3 pages. Or if you do the computer, then tell them I don't know what you do with the computer, but okay. And look at writing, I hate to do this, but look at writing down the bones again.
Okay.
I was soaked in dharma then, but I didn't, so people don't realize it, but I was writing about writing. But it's really dharma, and that's why it keeps, it was just ripe. It wasn't about writing. It was, but it wasn't.
Okay.
And then there was the poem. Oh, the poem. Well, I was a poet for 13 years. Who asked me that?
Somebody chatted it.
Oh, okay. I was a poet for 13 years, and then I won a fellowship, like I said, and I came back from Israel, and I couldn't get the manuscript published. I thought, I want to be in the world. And so but I was teaching, I didn't know it was writing practice. I didn't call it that then, but I knew about it. And then suddenly it all came together. The structure to write it, and this was a long time ago, 35 years ago. And so I still write poems secretly. I did eventually get the manuscript published in 2003, but that was in the 80s that but I secretly stick a poem in the beginning of all my books, a poem of mine, but no one has ever asked till this wonderful, who is this person? Who asked?
Somebody chatted it on.
Oh, chatted. Who are you, chatter? New Mexico. Rose in New Mexico. And so, I thought Row, New Mexico. Yeah, it's called Rose. Realize once I write a book, I make sure the new baby gets settled, but then I go on, I don't remember. But so this was one of my poems, and really I think it was when Katagiri died, my Zen teacher. I was so heartbroken, and I wrote this poem. Do you want me to read it? Yes. Okay. This is the first time ever. Who asked? Oh, it was a person on chat. This is ridiculous. We didn't used to have these things. It was just people in a room, and that was it. Rose. A ripe pear cannot be young again. A horse has just so many years to live. Do not say anything. Let the past go. I reach my hand back through the leaves. No skull, no mouth. I left you in a yellow book. I left you on the backyard table. Why hold on anymore? Where is that silver pearl? No beach to swim, no sand, no luncheon counter. Still, there is a taste of honey, and don't those petals forgive everything as they fall? Not bad. Do the Zen people know what I refer to? Where is that silver pearl? Do you know what that is? That was so wonderful for me. You must. Do you know it? No. Well, my understanding was there was a time when I was really answering koans, and my understanding was your mind, when you really know a koan, is like a silver pearl. No, a pearl rolling in a silver bowl. Yeah. And that's how your mind is. The pearl doesn't go up, in a silver bowl. It's just, there's no resistance. It's just there. Isn't that wonderful? I loved that. Yeah. I started out with Trungpa Rinpoche. Yeah. For a long time, yeah. He was great. He was a great teacher. But the activity at Boulder was a little scary for me, and I got married and had an excuse to leave. And then I found Katagiri. So perfect timing. This was really nice to be with all of you, and thank you for coming. And you are very lucky to be here and bring people. Valerie is the teacher. I mean, to tell you the truth, I asked her if she would be my teacher, but she said no. So I said, let's be friends. But she's really good, and she makes great effort. And where else do you get, this is the real stuff. Look at this. Do you hear? This is real adobe. You don't get that in certainly in Santa Fe. I'm from Taos. And the floor, this is a mud floor. This is the traditional floor. I mean, it's a great place. Okay.
Thank you so much again,
Yeah,
Natalie.
thank you.
And,
Thank you.
we do have